Okay, we are picking up with our third class in chapter 15 of Tanya, and we left off last time with this description of this person who is, albeit that he's a Beinoni, he's quite an unusual Beinoni in that he's not fighting a war with himself. We talked about him in terms of that his nature is to do the right thing. Right? He has a certain nature in him that he is going to play by the rules. He's going to be into learning. He's not excited by the taivas, the desires of this world. He's just a little bit of an unusual character, not your normal character. And I think that one of the main reasons why the Alter Rebbe is bringing this here is to try to show us that this is not the goal. In other words, many times, when we think of what is the goal is, for example, to just have a person that's doing Torah mitzvahs all day long. So you could think that that's the goal. So if that's the goal, then this person is golden. He's perfect. He's exactly, the epitome of what you want to be. And it seems to me that the Alter Rebbe is really not really bringing it to show us that this is the win all, the be all and end all, like this is where we want to be. It's more to contrast it. And that's what we're going to see as we go down the page here, because we're going to see that really what the Alter Rebbe shows us is what is valued in Yiddishkeit is the effort. So without the effort, we're definitely missing something. And so even though this guy is seemingly perfect, right? And from so many different angles, he's perfect. He's not going after all his desires, not going after all the pleasures of this world, sitting and learning Torah all day and night. What else do you want from the person? So nevertheless, the Alter Rebbe says, no, that's not the point. The point is to struggle with oneself. The point is to overcome oneself. The point is to put up a fight with your own nefesh bahamis, with your own animal soul, and really to constantly be trying to do better. To constantly be trying to force yourself to be a better person every single day. That's what we're talking about here. So let's see it inside. We'll go back. We're on the top of page Chaf Aleph, page 41. And he says like this. He says, V'chein, let's go 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down. V'chein b'shar tanuge olam hazeh. And also with all of the other pleasures of this world, hu mechuser hahergesh. He's lacking this feeling of hana, of pleasure, b'tivo, in his nature. V'lachein ein tzarich lizboinin kol kach b'gedulas Hashem. He doesn't have to meditate so much on the greatness of Hashem. Lahaylid mibinaso ruach das v'yiras Hashem b'meichol lishamer shalolav al mitzvahs lo yisaseh. Right? So what is he saying? We've been describing up until now that the objective here is for everyone to be using their brains, to using their minds to meditate on the greatness of Hashem, to arouse within ourselves these feelings of excitement for God, excitement for Yiddishkeit, right? The ideas of taking Yiddishkeit seriously. Whether it's the idea of Ava, which is the excitement for Yiddishkeit, or the idea of Yira, which is the idea of, we have to take it seriously. If the Shulchan Aruch says do this, then I have to do this. If the Shulchan Aruch says don't do this, then I'm not going to do that. Right? It's not a joke. This is real life. This is what you have to do. But where does it come from? So up until now, the Alter Rebbe has been discussing this idea that a person has to spend time every day and think about Hashem, and think about how he's being created, and think about how the world is being created, and think about all of these points that Chassidus brings. And the more you're going to think about it, the more you're going to get excited, and the more you're going to develop these emotions of love and fear for God. This person is not doing that. He doesn't need to. It's just natural by him. So he's just sort of going through life in this, call it a status quo, but it happens to be that his status quo is that he's doing everything right. Right? My status quo is that I would not do everything right. Right? So the difference between me and him is that my status quo is I have all right desires for this world. I'm not necessarily learning all day long. And I have to push myself. How do I push myself? I have to meditate. I have to think in my mind about Hashem, and then I have to elicit within myself these feelings that should come out, that should say, this is what's right. And since this is what's right, this is what I want to do. I want to do this with my life. I want to make today a better day. I want to make tomorrow a better day than it was yesterday. That's part of my meditation. That's part of my adjustment in my life as I'm thinking through how I'm taking my steps forward. So he's contrasting that, and he's saying, this person, he doesn't need this. He doesn't need to give birth to this emotion. Like he says here, lahoylid, to give birth, mibinaso, from his bina. Why does it say from his bina? From his the kayach of bina, because the more that you have a meditation which says, like God is great. No one's going to argue with that. Great. God is great. But it's not going to impact me because it's a one-liner. As Rabbi Yossi Paltil likes to say, it's a nice bumper sticker, right? In other words, it's a great line, but that is not going to make me change. That is not going to elicit an emotion from me. That is going to be an impacting, everlasting emotion that's going to then charge me up to the point that I'm now going to conduct my life in a different way. It's not going to happen that way. Because in order for me to really elicit that emotion, the way the Alter Rebbe is talking about it here, I need to spend time thinking about the details. I have to spend time thinking about the details of the way Hasidus explains to me all these different meditations about Hashem, about God, right? Then I'll be able to give birth to it, right? Then it says Ruach Das, right? Through the spirit of his Das, through his focus, through his focusing in on this topic, whatever the topic is. So this person doesn't need that. V'yiras Hashem b'maicho, or a fear of Hashem in his brain, lishamer, to guard himself, shelo la'avor al mitzvahs lo yisaseh, to not go and transgress any commandments that Hashem says. In other words, Hashem says, don't do X, whatever it is, right? So a lot of times, my Nefesh Bahamis wants to do X. So how am I going to get myself not to do X? Right? So the way I'm supposed to do it, according to what Hasidus is teaching me, is I have to think about Hashem. I have to think about my neshama. I have to think about why I'm put down in this world. I have to think about the creation. I'm thinking there are many different ways of doing it, but the point being that I'm going to think about it. And the more I think about it, I'm going to arouse within myself a feeling of, wow, I have a mission here. I can't be spending my time going after X if Hashem is telling me X is no good, right? And then he says, V'ahavas Hashem b'libo, or the love of Hashem in his heart, l'dafkabo, to cleave to him, b'kiyum mitzvahs, v'talmud Torah, keneged kulam, right? And obviously what he's saying here is that the more I'm going to think about Hashem, and I'm thinking about, wow, Hashem gave me this opportunity to do this mitzvah. Right, it's a very cute video that's on YouTube, and my friend Gil Locks from Yerushalayim made that I was thinking about today. Right, it says right that you should serve Hashem with joy, right, and you have to, right, with regards to the shaking of the lulav, right. So he has this whole video where people are by the kaisel, and everyone would come and they shake the lulav by the kaisel, and the whole reason why it's a whole halachic thing, but. Point being that they would make the bracha, and he'd say, "I'm sorry, but you did it wrong." And you have all these ultra orthodox people there. What do you mean I did it wrong? How can I do it wrong? I know what I'm doing. It gets up there like a little bit. They get a little anxious. And he says, because it says you have to serve Hashem with happiness with doing it. And then they break into a smile, right? And make it. The idea is that, in other words, it's when you think about what it is that you're doing, and you think about how you're, through this mitzvah, you're cleaving to Hashem. It makes you happy. It makes you feel an emotion. It makes you want to do it. It makes you want to do it more, and not just do it by rote, right? So he says here, right? Ella dai lo bi'ava misuteres asher belev klalis Yisrael. So he says that with this person that we're describing, it's enough for him, the Ava Misuteres. Now, we've mentioned the Ava Misuteres, the hidden love that every Jew has a number of times now in these classes. And it's the love that was given over to every Jew as an inheritance from the fact that he was a descendant, or he is a descendant of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Right? That's where it's coming from. That's every Jew has it. Now we're going to get into much more detail about this, about what we call this hidden love when we get to chapter 18. But it's suffice to say that this is not something he worked on. What we've been talking about up until now is a love that he worked on. In other words, when the person spends his time learning Hasidus and then meditating on the Hasidus and then trying to really get it and internalize it in his life, that should cause him to have a certain level of love for Hashem. But that's not something that just happens. That's something that he spent his time working on. He put tremendous effort into it. That's called work. That's called Ovid. That's called serving God. Right? The other level of love that he's talking about here is enough to push him through. It's a love, not that he is meditating. He doesn't need to meditate. Not that he is thinking about Hashem. He's thinking about what this mitzvah is. He's not doing any of that. It's just natural to him. Yeah, but God says, put on tefillin. So I put on tefillin and then, which is, in a certain way, we could talk about, how beautiful that is as well. But that's not the angle that the Alter Rebbe is coming from here. Where Alter Rebbe is coming from here is that this person is putting in no effort because he doesn't need to. And since he doesn't need to, he doesn't. Right? So he's just relying on this hidden love of Hashem, which is in the heart of every Jew, shenikra oyevei shemo, which are known as the lovers of his name. But lachein eino nikra oyevet klal. So as the Alter Rebbe has been saying here, this person, you cannot call him an oyevet at all. You cannot call him a person that serves Hashem at all. That's just not what he's doing. He's not putting the effort in. Ki ava zu amisuteres eino pu'ulaso va'avoidoso klal. Because this love, which we're calling the hidden love of Hashem, is not based on his efforts. It's not based on his work at all. Elahi Yerushaseinu Mavosenu, like we said before. It's an inheritance from our forefathers. That's where he got it from. L'klal Yisrael k'moshekatsav l'kaman, to all the Jewish people, as we're going to describe later on, when we talk about it in chapters 18 and 19 more specifically. Okay? So, why did the Alter Rebbe bring this here? The Alter Rebbe is about to contrast this, and he's going to take it a step further. And what he's going to say here is that this is not the Ovid that we want to be. This is not the goal. And it's a mind-boggling idea, like we were saying before, because the results of what he's doing are really the results that we all want. But it's not enough. It's the effort that counts. That's what the Alter Rebbe is signaling here. The effort. That's what makes a person into an Ovid, a person that serves Hashem. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're looking for. That's the goal. So even though the results are all the right results, the way that he got to the results are not what is the ideal way of being alive in this world. Now he takes it a step further. He says, "V'chein af mi she'enu masmid b'limudo." Even someone who is not a masmid b'limudo b'tivo. In other words, it's not that he is a person who is naturally drawn to learn day and night, learn Torah day and night. It's not his nature. But rak shehirgil atzmo lilmod b'hasmada gedola. But instead, he accustomed himself that he worked hard on himself to sit and to learn and put tremendous effort into it. He put a lot into it. He changed in a certain way his nature. V'nasa hergalo teva sheni, and he's made this into a second nature by him because that's not his true nature. But through his work on himself, through his efforts, he's made it. Dailo b'hava misiterezu ela imken roitze lilmod yosem ergila. So, and the idea is that you could say, wow, this person, he's the ideal person. Now we're getting somewhere. This is who we're supposed to be. This person whose nature is not, for example, to sit and learn all day. And he's put himself completely into it. And he's tried so hard. And now look at him. He's like this big time learner and he's a big time doer. He's like really, wow, he's changed himself. Awesome. The best. Alter Rebbe says, wait a minute. Not so fast. It was the best while he was doing that. But now, he's coasting again. Coasting is not success. That's what the Alter Rebbe is saying here. Coasting is not success. What the Alter Rebbe is saying here is that now this person also is not really accomplishing, because the accomplishment is in the effort. So even though he changed himself over completely, that wasn't his nature. He worked so hard to get here. But now that he's here, he's just coasting. It's not the winner. He's no longer a winner. He's no longer the Ovid anymore. That's the idea that he says, unless he wants to change himself every time and to learn Yosim Regilaso, to learn more than what is his nature now, his new nature now. Ubezeh yuvan mashakasu begamara the Ovid Elokim hainu mishashayne pirko meya pamim ve'echad. Now we can understand what the Gemara says when it says that who is the one that serves Hashem? One that learns the topic 101 times. However, who is the one that doesn't serve Hashem? The one that only learns 100 times. What does that mean? So we're going to get more into it in the next class, but let's just give an introduction here. The idea is that even if you change your nature and even if you work so hard, once you get to that next point and if you plateau, then it's not enough. The objective is at every step of the way, it's to keep on trying harder, to keep on improving oneself, to keep on succeeding and winning out over yourself at every level. So even though you changed your nature, you worked so hard to get to where you are, and the minute you start coasting, you're back to the person that doesn't serve. And the objective in life, as he's saying here for us, is to be an Ovid. That's the goal. The goal is Ovid. The goal is to serve, which means what? Which means putting in the effort. That's where it is. And the point is that everyone has their own scale of where they're holding. So, as we mentioned in the last class, it's not about me in comparison to you. It's me in comparison to the way I was yesterday or 2 days ago. And if I'm not working hard on myself today, so then I'm not an Ovid. I'm not accomplishing my mission in this world. However, if I'm working so hard today and I'm making it better than it was yesterday, regardless of if comparison of, to the overall comparison to this person or that person, who cares what they're doing? It's all irrelevant. It's me versus myself. And what I need to do is to make every day a better day. Like the Rashbats, the famous teacher, before the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe would go to sleep every night, he taught the Friedrich Rebbe to say, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe to say, tomorrow is going to be gar andrish. Tomorrow is going to be completely different. Because tomorrow, God gives us life, God willing, and it gives us a chance to do even better than what I did today. And that's the goal. That's what we're here for. Okay, that's it for today.